Fragments of Silicon, is it starting to seem like summer?
All right, welcome to another installment, the season finale, in fact, of Fragments of Silicon, as we wrap up season 22. Is it 22 or 21?
21.
Like,
It says 21 on the sign, so.
yeah, there we go. It's not just we've been running this show for so long, it's that we have two shows. So seasons tend to get blurry some of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, point is another season is coming to a close, which means we'll be off for a couple weeks, and then we'll be back to do it all over again.
Until the
So
end
with
of
that,
time.
we have to conquer that second law of thermodynamics first. But
It's fine. I'm sure we'll sort it out at some point.
indeed. Anyway, to the news. Petty, you start us off this week.
Oh, fuck. I thought this week was going to be relatively quiet. The family decided to go fishing, and I decided to stay home because I've never really been much interested in fishing. So just kind of hung out at the house. And then we had a massive rain spurt over the last week, and we think the leak in the roof is getting worse. So that's fun. Hopefully we can get it sorted here soon, because we got some better some better roof patching stuff. So in an ideal world, that sorts it, and we don't need to call professional to get on our roof because we don't have the money for that right now. Mom should be just gotten word that she starts orientation on the 23rd of June for her new job. So that's fun. And then the big stuff yesterday, we had, I don't know if any of you guys know about the electrical term of a brownout.
Mm-hmm.
For those of you who don't know, it's similar to a blackout, but parts of your home have some power or lower power.
It happens when the network is not properly set up to cut stuff off when there's insufficient power, so you're getting some power but not enough to do everything.
Well, the reason why we had ours is we had a tree trying to grow into a transformer near our house. So that's what screwed up the electrical for our house and our garage. So, had to call the electric company, and there were some quote-unquote casualties. We lost 2 power strips, 3 fans, and the power transformers that keep our video doorbells running.
Mm-hmm.
So that was fun. And then one of the power strips that died is at my mom's desk. My mom has a whole bunch of stuff she hoards around her desk. The outlet to plug in the strip is on the back wall. So I had to crawl around underneath her desk, help her move stuff just to get there to swap out the power strip. That was not fun. I am in a considerable amount of pain because being physically disabled sucks. And I really shouldn't be crawling around on the floor, but, you know, something, don't have the money to call an electrician. Or probably a moving crew. Anyway, that's been sorted. I'd like to see about possibly heading to the card shop at least once over break. Get some more Digimon playing in. But it really depends on, you know, gas money and life. But yeah, as far as like plans for the break for me, a lot of it is mostly just gonna be chilling out here. Early July is when we're looking at opening the pool up. Just because we found when we had the repair to the water in the garage, apparently that wasn't rated for all weather, and it burst when we had that big freeze. Luckily, it was after the stop valve instead of before it, so we didn't come to a $400 water bill and a giant water mess in the garage. Just, I got sprayed when I tried to turn the hose on. Which, I mean, I'll take that over a $400 water bill any day of the week. So yeah, that's going to be just... It can be done. It's just going to be an annoying fix, because there's not a lot of room in the garage. And then we're going to see about getting some of those... I think they call it, like, pipe tape. They're like little heating coils you can put around a pipe to keep it from freezing, specifically for like outdoor applications, so your, you know, hose bib doesn't freeze. Pretty much same thing. Just got to keep it warm enough that it doesn't melt the plastic, and, you know, keeps the water above freezing, so it doesn't burst somewhere else in the garage. But yeah, hopefully we'll look more into that probably later in the year before fall. But yeah, that's a later me problem. And yeah, I think that's it. Digimon's going smoothly, and we'd like to do more of it over the break if possible. Next victim.
Well, that'd be you, Gollix.
Well, as some of you might have noticed, the Switch 2 came out. I was at the local Best Buy picking up the amiibos that I pre-ordered because I've had trouble with those in the past, and they had some just hanging around. So after a little bit of consultation, and they didn't have any of the Mario Kart bundle, but that's not my highest priority anyway, so I ended up picking it up, and I have not set it up yet, but I'm going to sometime this week.
Oh, so you have a Switch 2?
Yes.
Okay, that's actually important for us because, not surprisingly, Switch 2 codes have started appearing on code sites.
Yeah, again, I haven't set it up yet, but I have it, and I'll set it up sometime this week.
More to the point, that means if I get a Switch 2 code, I know who to give it to.
Yeah, because I'm not going to be getting mine anytime soon because my savings were trashed by trying to help Luna.
Right. So...
so that, and then Nintendo went ahead and announced, without a direct or anything, some fairly significant Splatoon news that is somewhat exciting to me as a person who plays Splatoon.
So, like, what is this? Is this like a new game or like
they
DLC?
They didn't announce much details about it, but yes, it's a spin-off game. It's looking like it's not going to be competitive multiplayer. It might be I'm guessing single player, but there might be some multiplayer content.
Single player / co-op, something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a little bit unclear. They haven't given much details yet, but it involves the new band from Splatoon 3 finally getting to do something important in the story aside from being mini bosses. Some people are thinking this might have been intended as DLC but gotten bigger. Or something, which I wouldn't be shocked at. And also to go along with it, with the Switch 2 update, they are making stuff that will make it look better on Switch 2, and also including another run of new weapons and at least one new stage. Which is not new, it's one of the stages from Splatoon 1. But it's neat that they are doing that, because this game was previously out of planned content. And I guess that's about it. Oh, I with those amiibos, I have gotten the new paraglider fabrics in Tears of the Kingdom.
Oh yeah, that's what they used for it, isn't it? At least for that's not the new the new game.
Yeah, in the next Hyrule Warriors, it is extremely likely that they will
do something.
That there will be characters that those will give weapons for. Because in the standard Warriors game way, you unlock better weapons through treasure by playing, but they've also been like, if you beat an amiibo, you get a weapon, and if it's a character that's in the game, you get one that they have. You get one specifically for them, and it's a little bit better usually. So yeah, that's pretty much my news.
All right. That means it's my go. Let's see. Nothing too radically different, other than the fact that the kids are not here this week. So that means it's a lot quieter. So much quieter. As to be expected, because children are, well, children. So they make a lot of noise and run around and do things. So, really, the biggest change here is we're officially in the rainy season. So it's been very wet, and I don't think anyone else here is familiar with how Florida rain works. Like, that is, it can be partially cloudy out and still be very rainy. Like, you can see the sun over yonder, and it'll be raining, like right in that particular spot. I think it might have something to do with how flat and low to the sea, just Florida in general is. But it always bewilders those who haven't been in state long. Outside of that, nothing too major to report. Like, I suppose on the gaming front, once again, just still kind of bouncing around, trying to find something long term. Right now, I am playing through Broforce, which is an interesting game. Like, what if we took an 80s action movie and made it into a loving tribute of a video game? Like, and yeah, that's all I got this week. So, merrily we shall roll along to the interview portion of the broadcast. And joining us this week is BossyPino. How you doing today?
Hello. I'm doing good. Feel free to call me Bossy or Austin. Works great. Nice to be talking to you all today.
Okay. Okay, Bossy. So, how we like to get started is we like to get to know the people behind the games, the studio, and all of that assorted business. And we ask this particular question: what got you interested in video games, both on a personal and a professional level?
Ooh, that's a great question. In terms of being interested in games, I imagine my story would be similar to a lot of other people's, which is I played a lot of video games growing up. Mostly a Nintendo kid, so like Majora's Mask was a big one for me. Diddy Kong Racing. Um, got into horror much later. It was very impactful. I remember playing Dead Space for the first time, Bioshock. So I've always loved games. I've always had kind of a safe space playing, enjoying games, being around other people who like games. In terms of finding uh, a path in terms of me making my own games, to some degree I've always been making stuff. If not games, then adjacent to games. Um, for as long as I can remember, messing around with different engines, programming stuff, drawing weird characters. And I, after college, went into the medical field and found it problematic for me. And I just had so much drive, passion to want to pursue creative things and never allowed myself to. So I finally said enough is enough and started making games and put them out there. And a few years later, some failures and successes along the way, I'm where I'm at now.
And when did the jump happen to creating commercially released software?
So I would say I've been working on projects my whole life. 99% of them have failed, which is that's part of the process. Maybe that's an extreme number compared to other people, but most of my projects didn't work out, and I learned a lot along the way. The jump to making commercial software was that kind of that the beginning of me saying, okay, I'm going to take this seriously. These creative outlets. I'm going to release a game, and I got to release this game. It's not going to be perfect. I'm going to dedicate a certain amount of time, and it's going to get done. And I released a game called Cryohazard, which is available on Steam. A pretty small horror roguelite strategy game. And it was only by really limiting myself, giving myself hard constraints, deadlines, um, scoping appropriately, was I able to make the jump to making something that was commercially available. It's so hard to transition from it, at least for me, from it being a hobby and a passion project to like, no, I'm gonna release something that is purchasable and um, and that I can stand behind and is not just a thing in my head or a fun way to spend my off time, but is a product. Um, Lots I had to learn there.
Not the first time we've encountered that sort of philosophy on the program. Like, and yeah, scope is definitely one of the things that really needs to be managed in order to get a game of pretty much any size out in a reasonable time frame. Like,
Yeah,
uh,
absolutely. Um,
s-
I think that people, I tend to have the philosophy that ideas are not nearly as important as execution. Like it's so easy for me to be romanced by a new game idea. Um, but in reality, focusing on like what I actually can do and what I'm good at and what I can execute well on ends up being a lot more uh, um, actually determining how good the game is, how good the product is, how good the project is. And so when scoping, really pulling back and being able to focus on what I can do, what I should do, and knowing that 80%, getting to 80% is far more important than getting to the 100%. But it takes a lot of time, takes a lot of failure, and anyone that makes software probably, has their own journey with that.
Yeah, it's come up. And how long did it take for you to create Cryohazard?
So Cryohazard was made in Game Maker after I think I worked for maybe a year and a half, 2 years on a shared project with someone that ended up not being released. So I had a lot of Game Maker experience at that point. Cryohazard took, I would say, around 6 months, all said and done, from like initial concept to pushing the big green button on Steam.
Yeah. I think that's a reasonable amount of time for a small scale game to come out, when the ethos is to create a product, as you said. Because, usually when we get people on the program here talking about making their first game, it's their passion game. And that usually takes about 2 to 3 years.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, one of my biggest goals with my first release was just learning how to. There's so much you have to learn in releasing a game that you would never even touch on if you got halfway through a dozen projects, right? Like how to manage the Steam store page and achievements and all the back end stuff and marketing, and some of those things are more fun than other things, but they're all necessary to release, and they're all good to learn if you're a solo dev.
No
Yeah.
doubt, no doubt. And I suppose the preeminent question here is, um, did you feel like you learned the lessons you needed to learn on Cryohazard?
Did I learn the lessons I needed to learn? Probably. I learned a lot. I Yes, I would say I learned the necessary lessons. I think that kind of getting to those halfway points with so many projects, it starts to feed this sort of pattern, where the coming up with the ideas is the fun part, and then the actually making the game is kind of a slog. And I was able to kind of break that pattern, that kind of repeating cycle, by saying nope. If the idea, no matter how good it is, if it doesn't meet the timeline, it can't go in the game. um, and that kind of taught me a lot what it really means to be a game dev, which is not all fun. It's not as fun as being able to sit around all day and come up with cool game ideas. I do that in my spare time, but when I dedicate time to working on games, it's a lot of everything else. There are still lots of lessons I am learning, especially with Muffles, which I've been working on for almost a year now. And I will continue to learn, but I think learning about how I make games, how I want to make games, and my kind of philosophy regarding some better patterns, some better cycles, I definitely learned starting with Cryohazard. So I'd say, yeah, I have.
That's good. That's good. And I suppose this is as good a time as any to transition into your current project, which is Muffles Life Sentence. So for the uninitiated, what is this game?
That's a great question. Muffles Life Sentence is a game in the vein of kind of weird RPGs. Like, I grew up with Paper Mario and the Thousand Year Door as well. Off, the RPG Maker game Off, as well as a few other RPG Maker uh, games kind of in that vein. I love a lot of those games growing up. Very impactful to me. Those kind of stranger RPG and JRPG games. And Muffles Life Sentence is It's a game about going to prison, and you wake up and you have no discernible identity, form. Your mouth is sewn shut. You're just a shell. No idea who you were. And it's a weird little journey into figuring out who you were, traveling through this prison, meeting a bunch of strange characters. It's been compared to, like, in the vein of Lisa and Undertale. Um, and there is a deck builder combat system, this kind of draft your identity sort of premise where you're able to acquire new characters by cutting off their faces and then get access to a bunch of their cards that you can use in combat. Yeah.
Yeah, I can definitely see the connections to some of the games you mentioned, like Lisa and Off and what have you. But I'd also say this is definitely forging its own identity, given how, I don't think there's a better way to put it, gruesome this game is.
Yeah, I really enjoy horror games,
Mm.
and Muffles is not a horror game. It's not structured like a horror game, but it definitely it has a intensity to it for sure. And I tend to really like, I think one theme that comes up continuously in Muffles is contrast, and I really like the happy, humorous, the comedic kind of sitting right next to the really dark and disparate and cynical. That sort of pairing, um, I like. And Muffles, like that face, that like car crash victim face, wearing like a little cowboy hat. There's something about that. Maybe I'm a sicko, but I think it's funny.
And I suppose it's also worth asking if this is a dark comedy.
Yeah, I would definitely say. I would say so. I do. Yeah, definitely there were some dark comedies that were inspiration um, for this game. One that kind of comes up for me, which I don't know that anyone's called out, but A Clockwork Orange comes up kind of more thematically, which I don't know how comedic people find that movie, but I think it's um,
It's got
so
some.
shocking and awful that, like, you either laugh or you cry, sort of thing.
It's definitely got some comedic bits, but I don't think I would ever classify A Clockwork Orange as a comedy. Like,
That's more than fair. That's fair.
like, um, that being said, um, how do I put this? Tone is important. Like, there's a difference between, say, being comedic and, like telling jokes throughout the entire thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I don't think I tell many jokes in Muffles. It's really character focused. I think a lot of the characters are in really dismal situations. So the premise of the prison, Maddox prison, that all the inmates wake to find themselves in, is that they've been converted. So whatever crime they were convicted of and brought them there, they've been rearranged, surgically changed to resemble that crime. Um,
Uh-huh.
so, like, there's a character named Streets in episode 2 that head resembles a traffic light, and based on their emotional state, kind of changes different colors, um, does different things, or the petties. All the petties are these little dudes that all look pretty much exactly the same, and it's because if you've been convicted of a petty crime outside of the prison, then the surgeons are just lazy. They cut corners, and they all just get put in like the petty pile, so to speak. Um, And so the characters themselves find themselves in particular situations that I think are funny, but I'm not having them saying one-liners or anything like that.
Right. So, one of the most interesting aspects to Muffle's life sentence is you've opted to go with an episodic release structure. Um, and I'm wondering what's the thought process behind that?
I would say it's twofold. First, I really like making games with kind of alongside the people who are playing them. And I hadn't had a huge opportunity to do that yet. So I really wanted to like release part of a game, hear from people who like it, what they don't like, what characters are drawn to, learn from that, make changes, and then the next part I can incorporate some of those things, grow and grow, and then by the end, I can be a lot further along in my own kind of journey as a game dev than it would be if I just was, in my own echo chamber in my room for 2 years and then put something out. That can be great, and that's what some games need. But I knew I really wanted to have a more collaborative experience, which has been so far amazing. Our Discord is really, really amazing. I really enjoy the space we've created there. And the other part is kind of similar to what I was saying about half-finished projects. God, if I had to be in my room like working on a game solo, just all day, every day working on it, I don't know that I could do it. That's pretty hard. And so again, to bunch it into these kind of chunks, these episode chunks, putting out there, kind of having like an arc in terms of development that then I can relax a little bit after an episode and transition to the next one. It's a much better structure for me. So been enjoying it so far. I don't know if I'll do it again because it's really hard. There's some particularnesses to doing an episodic game, but the game is very narrative, and it's been a great time using that structure with it.
Like, it's certainly an uncommon one in these days. It's like the only major game I can think of that's not an adventure game that's doing this kind of structure is Deltarune.
And Deltarune was definitely something I looked to, and I think a reason it's not done a lot is it's hard to do, and I don't know that all fans enjoy it. Feedback we've received is people don't really want to make the jump into playing the game, getting close to the characters, following along with the plot, only to then have to stop halfway through. I think there's a good number of people that like their games to be done when they play them. I mean, some people like early access, some people don't. And that's totally great. That's totally fine. And, I think Life is Strange was another game that we looked at in terms of the kind of structure of it and the released Telltale games as well, like The Walking Dead. And I think it's cool. I like it, but it doesn't work for every game. It doesn't work for every player.
No.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose that does need to factor in another perspective. One you touched upon a bit, but we haven't really delved into, and that's the audience's perspective. You mentioned you liked building a game alongside your audience. So I suppose the question there is, how has the audience been receiving Muffle's life sentence here over the course of its 3 released episodes so far?
I am so happy with how well it's been received. It's a very niche game. It's weird. It's very particular. It's very born of my own brain. I see a lot of myself in it, which to people who have played the game, that might think I don't know. There's a lot in Muffles for sure. Lots of sides of me. And the response has been incredible. Like I had never made art for a game before working on this game. I've always strongly disliked when I put pen to paper. I'm never really happy with the art I've been able to make, and I've learned how to make art through this game. And whenever people say like, "Oh, the art looks so good. It's such an interesting style," it always like shocks me. I'm like, really? People think it looks cool. I'm proud of something. I've gotten a lot better, but it is very particular. It's very like high contrast visuals that not everyone's gonna like, and the response, although it's kind of this kind of niche core group that found it, has been really really positive. And I frankly don't know if I deserve it, but I definitely feel inspired and very passionate about continuing to make the game the best it can be, releasing all the episodes, and then using it as a great jumping off point for the next project. So I've been very happy with the response so far. And as well, the amount of incredible fan art that has come in. Like, I thought only big games got fan art. I've received so much amazing fan art of some of these characters, and that's a part that really I personally really enjoy. It's been very cool.
And how many episodes is Muffles supposed to be here?
The plan right now is 5, so 3 is just over halfway, and we'll see how long it takes. But hopefully 5. You know, we spoke on scope earlier. 5 is the current scope, so that's what I'm shooting for.
Okay. And I suppose along all those lines, and perhaps it is maybe a bit premature to speak about, but if you were to do another project like this in the future, would you stick to 5 episodes, or do you think more or less would be more sufficient?
When you say a project like this, do you mean an RPG or just something I'm interested in, or
Well, let's say
something
you
narrative?
make Muffles Life Sentence 2 here.
Mhm.
Would that be like 5 episodes, or would you want to cut that down to 3? Or is this all circumstantial on the project?
Good question. I would definitely say, on one hand, it is circumstantial because I had a very particular story and arc in my head starting to work on Muffles. And I knew to tell the story the way I needed to tell it, it was going to take 5 episodes. I could certainly see myself, doing something Muffles related, and it's a much tighter story. I'm able to tell it in a much more slimmed down way. I also tend to think, I think as I improve as a writer, as a game dev, I am able to tell good story in shorter ways. I think some of my favorite games are really compact experiences. One I always look to is Iron Lung, the David Szymanski game, the horror one. How so much is there in such a short, compact game experience. Like, I think it'd be easier for me to try to make a 20-hour game than it is to make a really good 2-hour game. So certainly an ambition of mine is to have more kind of, what's a good word for it, more streamlined experiences. Not just streamlined, but like reduced down to its most important essences. Working on just the most saturated time you're spending with the game, the most impactful. But also 5 episodes. RPGs, it kind of sucks to have a short RPG. I mentioned like Paper Mario and Off, and those are both. They have some time to breathe to get you to learn the characters. So if I think if I took on Muffles 2 and it was an RPG similar to the first one, I'd want to make sure it was long enough for you to get to know the characters, introduce new ones along the way, and tell the right kind of story. So it would really just depend, but I think I would shoot for it being a bit shorter.
Okay. That makes sense. Um, I suppose you'll see when you get there, if you ever get there, in terms of like sequel. Um, but it sounds like you have been discovering things along the way, nonetheless. Um, is there anything that if you could go back and fix, so to speak, you would?
Oh yeah, and I do it all the time. I tend to, um, as I'm working on future episodes, I try to keep a eagle eye on my community, on the Steam discussions page, on um, the Reddit stuff, just seeing if people have bug complaints or something's not working or a weird RPG Maker ism or what have you. I want to go in there and fix it as soon as I can. So in that sense, definitely want to change stuff, improve stuff. Have learned a lot about setting up the back end for a project from like a more software perspective. Just because an RPG, the scale of it is so big that you kind of need to build it smart from the beginning, and I've learned a lot there. In terms of the side of the question you're asking when it comes to like the creative end, like are there creative decisions that I wish I did differently? Um,
Hmm.
I almost certainly like I want I'm going to think every new project I do is going to be better than the last one, because why would I be working on a project unless I think it could be better than what I did before? And there's aspects of the combat system, the characters that I could change. I have different sensibilities, but at the same time it's a little bit of a time capsule, and some parts of the story reflect where I was at the time and how I thought about things, and I think it's important for me not to change it. I don't want to pull a George Lucas and retroactively um, change what people like, warts and all. So I think there's an importance in keeping it the way it is, but I'm always looking for ways to make it better too.
Seems like a healthy philosophy to have in terms of game development. Um, and I'm going to divert things here and pass it over to my colleagues here to see if they have any questions about the card mechanics specifically, since they're a lot more into board and card games than I am.
Sounds good.
I've just been kind of sitting here playing it, and I guess there's going to be ways to like increase your MP and stuff to play more cards as things go on, like deeper card mechanics and so on.
Yes. So I played. I enjoy a lot of roguelites. I enjoy like Slay the Spire and um. Oh, there's so many good ones. Cobalt Core, Monster Train, Inscription. I want to make sure with Muffles, it doesn't get so deep on the strategy that it distracts away. Like Muffles is a narrative game first and foremost,
Right.
but there are absolutely people in our community that are very. They really enjoy the card combat side of it. So I want to make sure there's a lot there to play with and to make cool decks. Um, in terms of MP specifically, there's not a lot of ways to increase. I try really hard to stick to the three, but there's a lot of ways to get cards to gain MP mid-turn, ways to make your cards cost less MP and things like that. And people love coming up with ways to just like do these crazy one-turn kill boss.
Oh yeah.
Um, Yeah, which I mean, you see anywhere. I don't try to discourage it because I think it's cool, but they do like to break everything.
I was about to ask, like, there are sometimes cards like games like this where like utterly broken combos come up. Do you do anything to like try and squash that, or is it one of those things as long as it doesn't actually like cause the game to fail, you're fine with it?
Yeah, that was something I had to think a lot about. because at the end of the day, it's fun. You feel if you manage to figure out this like perfect deck that like okay, yeah, I can have this infinite loop of feeding myself MP, and then I got this card that uses this other card and it shuffles this into my deck. Like that's cool. Like I think that's awesome. I love when people figure out stuff like that. Um, the thing that I will change and have changed, and actually I did a lot of rebalancing for episode 3 that was like retroactive that like changed cards throughout the game. What I will change is I don't want it to be terribly easy. Like I don't want you to stumble upon like, oh, I accidentally made the greatest deck of all time. So you can do some crazy stuff. But not it's not terribly easy. And as more episodes get added, the types of enemies change a lot. So like for instance, episode 1, episode 2, there's not a ton of multi-enemy groups. Most of the time you're fighting one or two enemies. Most of the time. Episode 3 and on, they're much bigger groups of enemies. So a lot of cards that do really well against a single target, their value is going to become less and less over time. So there will be a little bit of a need to, even if you have a great deck, to adjust with the times, so to speak.
Gox, do you have anything?
Not much really, but it does look interesting.
I guess has there been any thought about making it like an actual card game, or do you just want to stick with digital?
Oh, like a physical card game?
Yeah.
I mean, off the bat, no, I have not thought about that. People really, there's been an outcry for some merch. Usually, it's not card-related merch, though. That'd be interesting. I don't know how well it
If you
would
don't
play.
have any like super digital mechanics, it's probably doable.
Yeah, because like the whole like I've seen the like boss battle type thing where it's literally you just shuffle a deck, and then the cards you draw is the the thing the boss does, like the whole boss fight mechanic or just like fight in general mechanic has been done in card games before. So this looks like it could be doable, and that's kind of like what I like about a lot of like digital card games is how doable is this as a physical game if I took to a board game night. Could me and some friends have some fun with it.
Right, and you absolutely could. I think the first thing that comes to mind is I've come up with concepts for physical card games that I think would be a lot better than Muffles. I think Muffles I really enjoyed the card combat aspect of it.
This is one of those, it could
might not
be
have the
an
deck.
interesting like foray, like if you want to do your first physical card game, it's simple enough, you could probably use this to get your foot in the door.
Sure, and people might, some of the art on the cards is pretty strange in particular, and people might be interested in the kind of aesthetic of it. Yeah, I don't know. Something I'll ask my community about what they think about that. Cool.
Like, what on the subject of breakable card combos, it's probably a lot more permissive because this is a one-player narrative RPG kind of deal, and not a competitive card.
It's one of those things more like they accidentally create an underflow that makes the game unstable and crashes type things that get patched out, not like infinite loop decks.
I see. Yeah, that would definitely be of a greater concern than having an all-crushing deck.
Yeah.
There are no Egyptian god cards to ban here.
And players have both, quote unquote, broken the game in the sense they have like this crazy one-turn infinite loop deck, and they've also broken the game in that they've caused it to crash based on certain decks. So I've seen it all.
Yeah, I imagine the crashing decks would probably be patched out more than just infinite loops, where you just basically pat them on the back like, go have fun.
Oh yes. I've fixed all the current crashing issues that I know. And the infinite loops, I think they're cool. When I play, Monster Train, I want to have I want to break all the rules.
I'm pretty sure
I want
all
to
of
do
us who
stuff.
play even physical card games strive for some kind of infinite loop.
I've played very little Magic. I took part in a few. What do they call? I don't know if any of you all are Magic players, but like the kind of day one, the like the start of a new expansion. Um, I've been to a few of those where like people don't know.
Pre-release and stuff like that.
Yeah, and like people don't really know what the cards do or like what the kind of themes of the expansion are
Yeah,
yet.
my main card game is Digimon. So
Cool.
I've been to several like Digimon events, and like I can kind of see like this is like pretty similar in some respects, which is kind of cool, but like there's also like a lot of like Slay the Spire I'm seeing in here and stuff like that.
Yeah, I played Pokemon a bit growing up, the physical card game. And I do enjoy a card game that is kind of, what's a good word for it, like creature, like summon focus, right? Kind of a cool thing. I would describe Muffles as being a bit more like cards are abilities as opposed to cards
You
are
are the creature and the cards make you do things.
exactly. But I do really like the cards as creatures or as monsters or as summons idea. I could definitely see myself working on a project in the future that was in that vein because I think it's cool. And it visually there's so much there, so much like so many things to play with. Very cool.
And I suppose shifting a bit back to the narrative here, bit hard to ask this question without delving into spoilers, but uh, I suppose what's going on in episode 3 here, which just got released not too long ago.
So episode 3 is to give a little bit of kind of build up. Muffles and his, or I should say, Muffles their gang of cohorts of people they've cut the faces off of that live in their heads are traveling from this prison island to prison island across these episodes. Episode 1 was on Draken Crag, this kind of um, stormy, rocky island. Episode 2 on Genghis, this heated desert, Western inspired sort of bounty outlaw island. Episode 3 takes place in this densely grown forest called Tangletop. And episode 3 features a new character to play as each episode does, and involves the story of the Mad King by the name of Deus, who lives in this castle in the middle of this dark forest that you have to navigate through. And you are tasked by Deus to retrieve his love by the name of Kuni, who was this berserker warrior from the war days who they married in order to preserve the peace post the war. And shenanigans unfold.
Shenanigans. Like, now, are these episodes procedurally generated?
I'm not sure. How do you mean? How do you mean?
Like other roguelikes, do the prisons assemble themselves, quasi randomly?
Good question. I would not describe Muffles as a roguelike. There are hardly any components that are procedurally or randomly generated. it is definitely like a comparator point. Or what's a good word for that? It's people who see digital deck builder games instantly think like, oh, roguelite, because there's a lot of them and there's a lot of great ones.
Yes.
But Muffles is not one of those. You can, from the card combat perspective as well, you can make new decks, as many decks as you want from the cards you have at any time. You're never restricted into like starting a new run for any reason. It's kind of narrative first, which means I can't have stuff being too random. I gotta tell the right story.
That's what I thought, but it was important to check because, yeah, you are right. There are a lot of card-based deck builder roguelikes out there. We come across them fairly regularly.
Yeah, and there's a lot of great ones.
No, oh, no doubt. Like Slay the Princess comes to mind. Site one, but anyway,
I don't think there's anything in Slay the Princess that's procedural.
I think your thing is Slay the Spire, Adam.
Yeah,
yes,
that's the one.
sorry, Slay the Spire, which I think you cited.
Yes.
Um,
Slay the
Too many
Princess is a very
slayings.
different game.
Yes, they are. Oh, sorry about that. Anyway, so how long is a typical episode, roughly speaking?
Typically shoot for around 3 hours of gameplay for people the first time. But anywhere from 1 to 3 hours is what I tell people. There's quite a bit of side content usually. I like RPGs that have side characters, extra cards, ways to increase your HP, like consumables and fun stuff like that. New areas, secrets. So if you're trying to do everything, get all the achievements, it's gonna be closer to 3 hours. But try to shoot to that range, meaning that if you were to play 1 through 3 currently, it'd be anywhere from 3 to 9 hours, but probably a bit closer to the 9 hour end.
Which is fairly, robust, collectively speaking. 9 hour, like a 9 hour RPG is, going to be your day.
Yeah, certainly. I think that, like I was saying before about character and character growth and character arcs, I love movies and I love TV shows, and there's just some stories that don't really make sense to go in a movie, and there's some stories that just are done so well by that 2 hour format, or 90 minutes to 2 hours.
Yeah.
And so it really depends on the kind of story you're trying to tell. And I think that, Off was a big blueprint for me. I really love Off. And I took inspiration with the length and scope of a project like that in making Muffles.
Yeah, Off is coming back here, surprisingly enough. Like it's getting a remake or something along those lines. Is
I
that
think
one
it's
that
just a re-release with like new music.
I want to say it's also getting expanded content, but I don't know. Like it was at one of the Summer Game Fest things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, I think there might have been a demo released recently for the Off. My understanding is I don't know if there's new content being added, but certainly, yeah, the music's different. There's a bunch of new musicians on board making content, and a bunch of like, what's the word for it? Optimizations. Fits better in modern screen resolutions, things like that. Steam release.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So not sure how much you can share at this point, but what do you have in store for episode 4?
A lot. I tend to be more and more ambitious as these episodes roll out. I am planning on bringing some character arcs to their not resolution, but their tail end, trying to wrap up some loose ends before episode 5. Because God, do I have every episode? I'm adding new characters and new shenanigans, and I gotta start having things pay off. So episode 4, we'll see some of that. It'll be a new location, a new character to unlock. It'll be a bunch of new cards, new card mechanics. Kind of across episodes 1, 2, and 3 have explored like cards focused more on AoE, cards that are focused on give and take, sacrificing HP for abilities, cards that are focused on gaining MP and the loops you can make with that, cards focused on you taking damage from enemies and then having special effects when you're at low health. And I am going to be exploring new mechanics in episode 4 that you haven't seen before.
I guess
And
we didn't really get to on screen getting like other party members. Do they have their own separate decks, or do they all just pile off of muffles?
so the way that new faces work, so there's one character each episode that you unlock that you get to turn into as muffles, like Majora's Mask esque. You put on their face, you become them, and then you interact with people differently in the world, and you can unlock new things that way. And then there will be, in addition to that character, several other characters that you can then take the faces of, which become these kind of more, I call them minor masks as opposed to the major masks. And then from all those characters, you gain cards specific to them. So, like in the first episode, there's the character Half Croc as well as Os, and they both have their own different decks that have their own specific mechanics. Os tends to be it's very deprecating from like the HP perspective. They can sacrifice HP to do these really powerful moves. Half Croc has an incredibly aggressive deck. And then the Soul Mask character from episode 1 is focused on applying a shock status, which does percentage-based damage. So it's like a dot, essentially, over the course of turns, as well as regaining MP. And then as you play through all the episodes, you will unlock more memories for these characters, which also give you more cards for them. So the characters stay relevant throughout all the episodes, and you keep getting cards from them. So, like, if you really enjoy the way Os's cards pair with your other cards, then you're getting more and more cards as you play through the episode.
Do their decks just get better, or do you get more cards that you can swap out?
They don't just keep getting better. It's instead of the Slay Spire. Oh, bigger. I'm sorry. Could you maybe re-ask the question?
When you're saying that the new faces get more cards, do those just get added to their deck and the deck gets bigger, or do you get choices of what to swap out for them, or what?
Understood. So how it works is each of these different characters all show up in this big deck pool, this library in your inventory, and then you as the player can pick and choose any cards you want and combine them. So let's say you want a balanced deck, and you are having some more aggressive cards pulling from Half Croc's deck. Oh, you can choose from Onyor's deck, which is this character who is just a pot that has these humor cards that have these kind of rejuvenating effects. So you can get some health regen from Onyor. And then from the Soul Mask character in episode 1, some MP regain, and then you combine these with Muffle's default like attack and fortify cards. So you can mix and match and come up with a lot of crazy combinations. You're not restricted to using only one character's deck. In fact, it's the opposite. And that's how a lot of times people are able to break the game, is by having combinations that I wouldn't have thought of myself.
Okay. So it's just you get more cards to add to your overall deck.
Yes, and you get to choose what and where you add them. You're never made to.
I'm guessing these masks will have to be equipped to use their cards, or is it just they're added to the card pool and they might do better if you have that mask equipped or something like that?
I wanted to make sure that you were never restricted to having to wear a certain mask. And so when it comes to the card combat, you're totally free to make any sort of combinations you want, and then the kind of face that you get from the Soul Mask character is just the overworld stuff. It sounds a little disjointed, but in practice, people really like it. They like that they can focus on the card combat stuff during combat, and then the more narrative stuff,
Fair
the
enough.
social NPC interaction stuff, is kind of more focused on that mask. Yeah.
Because I've seen games where you have to have X equipped to use X's cards, or like say you have Y, you just can't use X's card. Period. Something like
And
that.
definitely with Muffles, I explored that because it kind of there's something in that that makes sense. I've seen that
Mhm.
form before, and just when I was playing the game, I'd be like, well, why can't I do this? Why
Yeah.
can't I use anyone's cards? So it ended up being a lot more fun allowing players to do whatever they want.
Oh yeah,
And it's
it's
cool to
definitely,
see.
there are definitely two different throughways you can go with development wise there. So yeah, I can kind of
For
see.
sure. And I definitely didn't want to be restrictive
hmm
in that camp. And I like seeing decks that have a bunch of different identities in them.
Can you take cards out of your deck? So say somebody wants to have, like, they like a certain character and they don't like another one. Can those cards just be removed from the deck for the certain character they don't like, or do they still have? They just kind of have to be there.
You are never required to use any character's decks. Even like Muffles, the starting deck, you do not need to use them.
All right.
The only requirements are there's two requirements when it comes to making decks. One is you have to have a minimum of 9 cards. You have to have 9 cards, and then the other requirement is there is a if you any of y'all are familiar with like Paper Mario, there was the badge system, and you could equip badges, and each of those badges requires like a point, and so you kind of spend these points to be able to equip these badges. They're kind of like slots, so points are how many slots you have available to equip these badges, so to
Right.
speak. And so different cards have different. It's called brain space in the game. So a really powerful card might require a lot of brain space, whereas another one might cost a lot less. So you have to make a few creative and strategic choices in terms of the kinds of decks you can make regarding brain space, but also as you explore through the game, find secrets, you're unlocking stashes that give you more brain space. So later in the game, you can do a lot more combinations than towards the beginning, for instance.
So you might find a super powerful card, but you may not be able to use it for a while because you don't have the resources to equip it.
Right, exactly. You can use it, but you might have to not use this other great card. So you got to kind of choose. And then down the line, episode 3, maybe you have enough brain space to equip both at the same time, and then you can do other crazy stuff.
Yeah. All right.
All right. So I suppose I'll wrap things up by asking, in terms of pricing, is are like all the episodes that are going to come out, 4 and 5, be the same price as 2 and 3?
That is the plan currently. We certainly have ambitions about doing a bundle once everything is out and making that really easy for people to just get the whole game at once and getting, there'll probably be deals for that. But yes, similar pricing model is what we've announced thus far.
Okay. Right then. So yeah, I think I am done with my questions.
Same.
It seems like, yeah, my colleagues are
Yeah, I'm good.
also good. So, Bossy, I want to thank you for taking time out of your schedule and being with us here today to talk about your game. It's been a very enlightening conversation, and we look forward to seeing how things shape up for the last 2 installments. Um, Indeed, the game is Muffle's Life Sentence. You can play Chapter 1 for free right now on Steam. And episodes 2 and 3 are currently out um, at a price of $3.99. At time of recording, episode 3 just came out a couple of days ago and is on a discount of $2.99. Um, any idea when episode 4 is going to be launching?
I do have an idea, and I am not ready to publicly announce. But if you've been following along and you've seen the kind of cadence of the last few, it's not going to be too far off. So if you stay tuned and you watch it, you'll see it before too long.
Okay, so keep an eye out for episode 4 whenever it launches later on this year. Petty, play us to the next segment. All right, so welcome to the topic of discussion. As mentioned last week, we are in the thick of not E3 season. And, there have been a lot of events, but in terms of the hierarchy of conversation, platform holders, even with Microsoft becoming somewhat less of a platform holder, still gets the priority. So, Microsoft had their latest showcase on Sunday, and they had a bunch of announcements. I suppose we'll start with the hardware device. Um, because the conversation around the ROG Xbox Ally and Ally X has gotten sharper. Because as I thought in our conversation setting this up on Sunday, these are Xbox branded devices. Maybe they've got
I mean, they
some
literally are in the sense that they say Xbox on them.
right,
But
but
they're not fully Microsoft products. No, they're
yeah,
made by Republic
Republic
of
of Gamers.
Gamers, and then that's part of Asus or something.
Yeah. This is also junctioned with the further confusion that Silk Song made its brand re-debut on the conference stages, highlighting this thing of all things. I still don't get it unless we are speaking about specifically because it's Silk Song, one of the most highly anticipated.
Well, yeah, that's why they wanted to do it. But yes, that is not exactly a game that's going to be pushing the limits of this. The main difference between this is definitely aiming for a fairly similar niche to the Steam Deck. It seems like aside from being Xbox oriented, although it'll still allow you to use Steam and other things, this thing is pretty high end compared to most of the Steam Decks. It sounds like.
The ultimate point is Silksong is a game that could be done on the original Switch.
Probably, yeah.
I'm like, well, here's the thing. Like, it's not like we don't know what Silksong looks like, because like the core fundamentals haven't really changed since 2019. Like the games basically look the same every time it's appeared.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, it's like people are wondering why it's taking this game so long. It's because it's a hand-drawn affair, partially. It's also, from what I remember, from what I understand, Team Cherry is working on a lot of content. Also, they are fairly perfectionistic when it comes to their projects. So all of that just equals a very long development cycle.
And they announced it probably. They had to announce it because the announcement of Silksong as a separate product was, okay, so that Hornet Mode DLC we promised as part of the Kickstarter has grown beyond the scope of being DLC and will be its own thing. But besides that, it probably would have been better to wait a bit because
Yeah.
it's taken a lot of time.
Right. Anyway, so Microsoft made this big implication that Silksong was launching alongside the Xbox Ally series.
Of course,
And yeah,
the memeverse has quickly decided that this means that the Ally is also never coming out.
on the flip side of thing, Team Cherry themselves have clarified a thing or two, i.e., no, this thing, the Silksong is not tied to the release of the Xbox Ally.
It's
It'll
just
be
coincidental that it will be available by then.
yes, like they have said that, um, the game might be out before the hardware launches. Just it'll be out this year.
Which they had
And
already said because of on the Switch too.
yes, you know, and yeah, it's like you know, we know very well why game developers don't want to attach release dates to their products until absolutely necessary, especially a game like Silksong, where like people are probably not going to believe um the release date of whenever until it actually launches and it's actually available for download. Yeah, not unwarranted either, but you know, Team Cherry's been very careful. I remember when we interviewed them several years ago, they were careful back then in when it came to these things.
Yeah, they don't want to say something that isn't true.
Yeah. It's just, Microsoft created a bit of a messaging mess here with a lot with their implication. Um, Putting that aside, uh, I guess the biggest game in terms of our particular interest levels that got announced here was the Persona 4 Revival. And announces pretty much what it got. Like,
Yeah,
okay,
they
yeah,
didn't even have any characters in the announcement video.
well, they just had you there. Like it was a teaser trailer.
Uh-huh.
You know,
Revealing that yes, there is in fact a Persona 4 remake, just as everybody has assumed forever.
yeah.
And again, we'll see how that ends up going out, because this one requires a bit more rewriting than the Persona 3 that got remade in order to be fully appropriate for modern sensibilities.
Well, it's also, we can ask the question: is this going to be base Persona 4, or is this going to be Golden? Too early to say.
Although my money is very strongly on it's going to be the base game. That's how Atlas does their fucking remakes.
Right.
We'll be lucky if they put an upgrade to Golden content later as DLC instead of re-releasing it again.
Let me see here. As a quick aside, no, Microsoft Call of Duty Black Ops 7 is not worthy of a one more thing announcement. It's Call of fucking Duty. We know it's coming. We generally know what Call of Duty looks like. It's like this is trying to surprise us with linear algebra. Christ's sakes. Anyway, for the Xbox heads in the audience, Final Fantasy is finally migrating over to the Xbox ecosystem, with Final Fantasy 16 now available for the Xbox family, and I want to say Game Pass.
And 7 Remake Intergrade coming soonish.
This winter, so not this soonish.
Not that long.
True, but you'd think soon would be August.
Mm-hmm.
They're saying more January of next year, in terms of the implications. So Gears of War Reloaded, going to be the first Gears of War game on the PlayStation 5. And to highlight something we talked about a bit before, still no sign of the purported Nintendo Switch 2 support from Microsoft here. It is possible that that Microsoft teams may have not gotten Nintendo Switch 2 dev kits yet for whatever reason. Like, look, I don't know the politics behind this, but all I know is like there's no Minecraft Switch 2 edition yet. I'm sure there will be at some point, but there's not. And out of all Microsoft properties that would appear on the Switch 2, that's the most no-brainer.
Since that was already on the Switch 1.
Yes. And like there's no sign of Sea of Thieves, which could presumably be run on a Nintendo Switch 2. We'll have to see, or Grounded 2 wasn't announced for the Switch 2. Yeah. So Obsidian Entertainment's weird live service co-op experiments getting a sequel. I really don't have anything beyond that.
Oh, is Grounded that also?
Yes.
Dang. Because, see, the first thing that I saw when I was looking at it is that it's like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
It's less life servicey than Sea of Thieves in that its content, it's done. It's gotten all the updates and all the content.
Oh, well.
And in news that'll make Mac froth at the mouth if we ever tell him, Super Meat Boy 3D is happening.
Yeah, it didn't look. It looks like I'm not fully convinced that they nailed it on that one. That is a gameplay experience that becomes different when you add an additional dimension.
On the other hand, there's really nowhere else for Meat Boy to go. Like,
that's fair. I'm not saying it's a bad idea to do it. I'm just saying you have to be careful when you do, because the 2D environment gives you the 2D perspective gives you a lot of ability to plan ahead and think and see a certain distance ahead to prepare to use your reflexes to avoid dying to stuff. That it's harder to pull that off in 3D.
What I'm concerned about in regards to Super Meat Boy 3D is speed, because here's
That
one of the ugly, one of the ugly truths about 3D gaming is it's on the whole a lot slower than 2D gameplay, and Super Meat Boy.
Sonic is one of the bigger examples of even the thing I was talking about. Just you need to give more space and time to do it if you're behind the character and looking into the distance, because stuff gets smaller as it gets further away. Instead of I can see the entire environment around my small character on the screen.
Or the way it looked to me, it looked like it's going to be a recreation of the 2D gameplay in a 3D space, which is probably the safest way to go about it. Keep the perspective, go with polygons instead. But also, not gonna lie, it's been rough times for Meat Boy for a while now. Like Super Meat Boy Forever. I don't know if the word tanked is the right word for it, but
was that supposed to be like a
set the world on
re-release?
fire like the original did. probably because no one was asking for a Meat Boy flavored Endless Runner.
Mm-hmm.
Or something in the vein of an Endless Runner. Technically
Mhm.
speaking, it's not an Endless Runner because it's stage-based. There is, in fact, an end. I'm like, but semantics aside, also, it's like, did you know that Super Meat Boy had a Falling Blocks puzzle-based spin-off?
No.
Um, uh, yeah, it's like, I didn't either until I saw it on sale for $1.
I thought that was Binding of Isaac. Or do they also make a Meat
Uh,
Boy flavored one?
No, it's an. I'm like, you got to remember, Tommy and Edmund aren't working together.
I know,
Edmund's been,
that's why I was confused. Because I
in
knew of
fact,
the Binding of Isaac block puzzle thing.
but no, the game I'm talking about is Dr. Fetus's Mean Meat Machine.
Ah, I wonder where they got that from. Looks at the Mean Bean Machine cartridge over on my shelf.
Yes, I'm like, I've not heard good things about this, but like I
Well,
said,
that's
it was
probably
it
why
was
it didn't toot too well, because they didn't have Super Meat Boy in the title.
they had Dr. Fetus,
Yeah,
which you
but
kind of like. It's a catch-22.
I
Like,
had no idea who the hell Dr. Fetus was, because I just kind of skipped through the opening thing.
He's the one who
right.
kidnapped Bandage Girl or whatever it
Yeah,
is.
it's one of those, like, people like me who didn't really care about the non-existent plot wouldn't know Super Meat Boy's antagonist was called Dr. Fetus.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and you know, and it's also like the announcement of Super Meat Boy 3D was, fairly blasé,
Mm-hmm.
to the point where I've seen people question, you know, if Braid came out today or Fez or Super Meat Boy, a lot of the indie hits from days long ago, would they have had the same impact? And we've talked about that
Yeah,
before, and
like
the
seeing
answer is
how the Braid re-release bombed.
yeah.
Meat
Meat,
Boy Forever got like negative traction.
yeah. So here's the thing about the indie scene. It's not very franchise friendly.
Right.
It's
With the
actually
exception of FNAF, yeah.
exceptions that prove the rule.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also, people aren't into FNAF for the franchise. They, for whatever reason, got hooked on the lore.
And like
That's what's
honestly, if they released another like Five Nights game without the name Five Nights at Freddy's in the title, it probably would have got forgotten.
but more to the point, there's it actually takes a lot of investment to maintain a franchise.
Seeing how basically the internet has driven Scott Kaufman to nigh insanity and back, yeah? Yeah.
It's why the indie scene operates more like, of all things, the arcade scene from long ago, where you get, sure, you get the occasional sequel, you get your occasional Super Breakouts and Asteroids Deluxes, Arkanoid 2s, but more often than not, you're getting new games one after the other.
Mm-hmm.
Like the closest is, like Pac-Man got a whole bunch of sequels that nobody remembers. Because it's just very hard to do more of the same and make that compelling.
I think bringing up Pac-Man 2 might actually get you punched.
Yeah. Well, that was certainly not more of the same.
I am aware.
I mean, in fact, this came up in our World of Goo 2 review.
Mm-hmm.
I said, like, that is a game that should not have taken 15 years to be made.
Especially
And
because it seemed like a DLC
Yeah.
pack they were charging full price for.
And I said, it's not bereft of new ideas, but the new ideas are so buried in the game. Like you don't get to the noir chapter until chapter 4,
Mm-hmm.
which is a fair ways in, which is way further than most people are gonna get to. So it just comes across as a mission pack sequel. But I think we're getting off track here.
Yeah.
Because there are other games to talk about here, like Clockwork Revolution.
I am tepidly interested in that just because from what they showed, it looked kind of cool.
I like steampunk, but I'm not in love with it.
That's the tepid there.
Yeah.
Because
I
at
mean,
this point, they have to do something really interesting with steampunk to make me want to get fully invested in it. Because I've seen all the tropes done to death.
I'm interested because of the developer, In Exile Entertainment. Well, I
Mm,
don't like them as much as Obsidian. They're still a good RPG developer.
right.
Speaking of which, the big game that Microsoft seems to be coalescing around is The Outer Worlds 2.
Oh, God.
Yeah. So The Outer Worlds 2 is coming out on October 29th. And for whatever reason, this is the game that Microsoft has decided to launch at $80.
Of note, it was not even a full price game. The original was not even a full price game when it launched, and it isn't even 60 with all the DLC.
What are we talking
Oh,
about?
Outer Worlds.
The Outer Worlds 2.
Oh, yeah. Well, it is
You
a
know.
sequel. Maybe it'll be more, or maybe it just did well and they thought, oh, hey, that means we can charge more for it.
Maybe, but at the same time, like, yes, it's doing what Bethesda wanted Starfield to do much, much better.
I mean, it's because Obsidian's a better developer than Bethesda.
Yeah.
I don't,
I shouldn't
that's
need to
not
download a mod pack to make your fucking map work right.
To be fair, you also have to do that for New Vegas as well.
But at least the map was fairly human understandable. In New Vegas, it just didn't have all the accoutrements. The Starfield map is they were trying to be cute and it was awful.
Anyway, Invincible Versus was announced. I know nothing about Invincible.
All I know is from the clips YouTube keeps shoving in my shorts feed.
Right.
It's one of those things.
It's like a superhero story, only with more violence.
Basically.
Oh, isn't that new and different?
Yes. Yes, it's not like the 90s and early 2000s happened, right, guys?
Yep.
Like, apparently the actual story is decent, but it's not really to my taste, so...
It's one of those things, instead of watching it, go watch a story recap series. You'll get a lot more out of it, unless you really just want to watch superheroes beat the fuck out of each other.
Yeah. Anyway, Ninja Gaiden 4 is coming October 21st. And this game probably coming at a really good time.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't know if you've noticed, but we are just being inundated with Souls-likes, Soulsborns, or whatever you want to call it.
It's time for Dad to come back with the milk.
you want a good old-fashioned character action?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know.
So yeah, Dad's coming home with the milk and about to whip some ass with the belt.
Like, I want a game where dodge is the primary mechanic, not parry.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's been another topic of conversation in, let's say, gamer circles. Like, I know Second Wind is talked about, why does every game have the parry mechanic?
Mm-hmm.
because it's a very satisfying mechanic when it's done well. It's just it's getting overexposed because the Souls-like genre is getting overexposed.
Hmm.
I need to beat Ninja Gaiden 2.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's a later me problem.
Yes, that's not a problem
Yeah. At least Ninja
either.
Gaiden 2 is
Um,
good.
Anyway,
I've
yeah. Well, nobody's asking you to play Ninja Gaiden 3.
I have already done that. I don't want to do it again.
Hmm. Anyway, Resonance: A Plague Tale Legacy got announced, which is a spin-off.
I
I have
missed that one completely.
I have the first Plague's Tale, and I have not played it yet.
Is that the one where you play as like two brothers in like the medieval ages, and one of them is dying of plague?
I think that's the second one.
Hmm. And like
Um,
something about controlling rats or something like that. I vaguely remember.
Oh, right. Age of Mythology Retold is getting a new DLC. I know they just made a big brouhaha about the Age of Mythology hitting the PlayStation. It's an RTS game, so it existing on a console is just why?
At
Why?
least with PlayStation, you do get the trackpad thing to use kind of as a
It's
mouse.
the PlayStation 5.
I'm
I don't know.
aware it's still better than doing it totally controller.
I'm still like, why? Why would you do this? Why would
Yes.
you play this on a console controller?
It is still
It's like,
it's still one of the worst ways to play it, but it's better than just a raw Xbox controller.
I mean, just personally, that is one of the most offensive ways to play an RTS.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
The only one that
like,
has done it well is Halo Wars.
no, I'd say there's a couple others, but Pikmin is an RTS, but Pikmin's also a game that was very much taking a controller in mind.
Mm-hmm.
See also the ripoff Overlord. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. I liked Overlord. I need to play that again. Anyway.
yeah. Let's see. New Dotenod game. Aphelion got announced. It's a basically what we got left is a bunch of random double A's and indie titles, or Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 and 4 has a pre-order demo now available, kind of deal.
Mm-hmm.
Thunder Lotus just announced their latest game at Fate's End. One of the bigger indie publishers out there.
Mm-hmm.
All in all, oh right. That's the one I wanted to talk about. Double Fine announced their new game.
They did? I honestly did not even see that at all.
Yes. They announced the puzzle adventure game Keeper for Xbox Series X and PC. Also coming in October. October is going to be a very big month for Microsoft.
My wallet's gonna die in October.
You got Game Pass. All of
No,
these are coming to Game Pass.
it's more Digimon's also coming, so I'm going to literally October 3rd, so it's also just time-wise.
right.
Also,
So,
that's when Mina the Hollower is coming out too, right?
yes.
Not that that one's going to be a huge expense, but I mean, I trust Yacht Club to make a good game better than some of these people, so.
Yeah, Mina the Hollower. I did send a email off to them about talking to them about Mina the Hollower. I have not heard back yet, but it also might be a tad early for that.
Also, something, the press corps is currently going nuts.
That has nothing to do with
Well, like
games press.
other like gaming press like IGN and the like are probably also getting in touch with them.
Yes. But they, it's like they sent the PR to me, so I just responded.
Mm-hmm. right now I have in front of me what's currently slated for Game Pass this year. We have The Altars by 11-Bit Studio, Lost in Random, The Eternal Die Rematch, Tony Hawk Pro Skaters 3 and 4, Wu Chang, Fallen Feathers, Gears of War Reloaded, Ninja Gaiden 4, and The Outer Worlds 2 is currently what's on the docket for Game Pass this year.
Yes. So, still, a lot of stuff announced by Microsoft, some of it actually relevant to our interests for once.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the first time since like maybe 2019 was the last time I really cared about a Microsoft show.
Yeah. It's still too fucking long.
Oh yeah, I just had to do a look at the cliff notes on this because I looked at the runtime of that and was like, nope, absolutely not.
Right. Right. So I think that'll about do it for, well, not just this conversation, not just this installment, but this season. So brings us to a close on episode 27 of season 21. I look forward to season 22 in a few weeks. Though, as always, we will be back a few days beforehand for our first review session of the season.
Well, and also
So-
there will be still like Digimon content peppered throughout, and like if I get a bug up my ass and decide to stream something else.
Yeah. We also might be doing a multiplayer thing on July 4th. Maybe maybe the day before, or the day after. Let's see. We might be doing some test streams during the break.
Mm.
It's like I don't want to I do want to revisit either Galax or myself being able to handle a stream if Petty is indisposed.
Be it grief or, if the brownout thing happened today, we probably would have had to cancel today's show.
Yes. So, we'll see how things meet out. But until next time, I shall wish you good gaming.